one of my favorite guests, one of my favorite guys. Been a big part of my show here in Huntsville at 97.7, but also on the game in Tuscaloosa on Tide 102.9. He was an All-American, a high school All-American at Pensacola's Pine Forest High School. Became an All-American at the University of Alabama. Was the starting left guard on the 2009 NCAA champions, the national champions, the Alabama Crimson Tide's 13th title, and then went on to play several seasons for the Atlanta Falcons, and that is the one and only Mike Johnson, the new color analyst for the Birmingham Iron. And Mike, I got to say, brother, I didn't listen to the TV. I had you and Tom Abraham tuned in on my phone, and you guys did a hell of a job. First chapter, and great work as the Iron win 26-0, my friend.
I mean, I really appreciate the kind words, man, and I always appreciate you welcoming me into the show with such open arms. But yeah, it was definitely unique, Drew. I mean, you're well aware. I mean, not just getting a new job, but having a new partner for a new team and for a new league in a new place. It was quite an experience. Me and Tom, neither one really knew what we were going to expect from the football game.
Right.
But I think all in all, the product turned out to be pretty good, and the game turned out to be pretty good, and hopefully we'll just continue to grow as a broadcast team. But it was a lot of fun for sure.
Well, you and I are both purists when it comes to football, but how did you like the rules changes? It didn't seem as gimmicky to me as I was afraid it would be. It was okay not having the kickoffs and then going for two. And then, of course, Barrett Slee and I had this discussion. We both were a little bit perplexed with the defensive rules, the illegal defenses that were called. But I thought the game was still, it still felt like football.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm with you. And when I first heard the rules about the illegal defenses and rushing more than 5 guys, rushing 2 yards outside the box, and not bringing corner blitzes, not bringing safety blitzes, things like that, I was, like you said, I'm a football purist when it comes to things like that. But I think what you try to encapsulate, if you're the AAF, is just to say, hey, we are what we are. We're a developmental league. We're almost an experimental league, I would like to say. And I think they know that they have to keep the games fast. I think they know they have to keep the games entertaining. I think they know that as a developmental league that you're not going to have the same players on the offensive line and the running backs and the ability to really, gel together and pick up, blitzes and zone blitzes and strong dogs and all the above. So I think they kind of put that rule in place with the illegal defense to say, hey, listen, we're going to be moving around a lot of pieces. We know that we're not going to have a really, really long training camp. We know that we're going to be missing players from one year to the next as guys move on with their careers in different directions. So I think it was something they had to do. And, I wouldn't recommend that the NFL adopt all the rules that the AAF has kind of put into use. But I do think some of them are very, very fun and some are very, very cool. And it's interesting to see the direction that maybe football could go in at other stages. So some of it I did like. Some of it I wasn't really fond of on the pro level. But I think all in all it works for the AAF and the product they're trying to put forward.
And then, Mike, what was your thoughts on Trent Richardson? He's your former teammate. He was a freshman when you were a senior. Had a big impact on the football team. He and Mark Ingram, the 1-2 punch. He's had his issues on the pro level, but I thought physically he looked really good. The O-line, that's going to have to come. They're going to have to get better, winning those battles up front in the running game. But what did you think of Trent's performance overall and what you saw out of him?
Well, I think, to start the game off, it really looked like the running game had a hard time pulling itself together. And I think some of that was the penetration that Memphis was able to get. Really, they were pinning their ears back on the defensive front, trying to shoot up the field. And they did a good job. Really, I would say on more than half of Trent's carries, he was actually met in the backfield. He was not allowed to get his feet up to the line of scrimmage and to make some of those jump cuts. But I thought he ran hard. I thought he showcased his ability to catch passes out of the backfield, which really during his time in the NFL was not known as being one of his strong suits. And I thought you really saw throughout the game he started to become more comfortable with what he was being asked to do and what the offense was going to be, asking him to do. The inside zone runs are really what Trent Richardson is going to build, his game off of. The cutbacks, cutting back behind the double teams. I thought when they asked Trent to run the ball out of the man schemes, when you saw some of the toss sweeps and things like that, I thought that's really when he was allowed to get tripped up in the backfield. But all in all, I thought it was a good debut. I think the offensive line is going to go back to the drawing board on some of the schemes, not allowing penetration. But Trent ran hard. He made some people miss an open field. He carried some defenders. And I thought, that's all you could have asked for him there in week one, in his new place.
Well, I thought, of course, we know 4 of those 5 guys are Bama guys that you've, of course, watched in their time in the program. But one of them, just now moving back to his natural position, he was a tight end at Alabama. But I really thought that Brandon Green did some good things at left tackle. What were your thoughts watching him?
Yeah, I thought Brandon Green was exceptional. He and J.C. Hasnow are both. J.C. Hasnow, obviously the center that was never really a full-time starter at Alabama, but he looks the part to me. And actually, Drew, talking to Joe Pendry, the GM of the Iron, who is one of my old offensive line coaches at Alabama, who has pieced this offensive line and this team together, he was really impressed with J.C. Hasnow throughout training camp, and Brandon Green as well. I think Brandon Green is one of those guys that it's nice that he's in this developmental league. He's probably going to need to put on, I don't know, I'd say 10, 15 pounds if he's going to make that transition to the next level as a left tackle. But, he has great foot speed, great footwork. He's got good power, and really he's going to be the anchor of that offensive line moving forward. The other side of the offensive line, Corin Curvin, Dominic Jackson, I think they've got a little bit farther to go. Corin Curvin obviously got dinged up there at the end of the first half, did not come back out for the second half at a knee injury. But all in all, I thought they looked pretty good, pass protection particularly. And I think Luis Perez, too, Drew, did a good job of feeling the pocket collapsing at time and being able to get the ball out. But being protected, and obviously Christian Hackenberg, the Memphis quarterback, wished that he was protected as well as Luis Perez was. But I thought they gelled together pretty well considering all the situations, and I thought they did a good job picking up a lot of those, 5-man rushes that they were asked to pick up.
Well, your former teammate Massaquoi, man, from Troy and former of the Atlanta Falcons, he and Xavier Dixon. Dixon had the ceiling interception. The outside linebackers in that 3-4 were very disruptive. In the secondary, I thought was very good for the Iron.
Yeah, Drew. I think it bears mentioning that the outside linebackers, the hybrids, the jacks or the bucks or whatever you call them, whatever scheme you're used to. Listening to a lot of those guys, those are going to be big positions in this league because you have to disguise somehow the 5 guys you're bringing. Like I said, there's so many rules on the blitzes and where you can bring them from and how you can bring them that guys that can drop into coverage and also rush the passer at a high level are going to be at a premium for the AAF. So I think you're going to see a guy like Jonathan Massaquoi, and I mentioned it a couple times on the broadcast. My old teammate, I did one-on-one pass rushes against him just a few years ago. He's kind of coming into his own, and he really looked comfortable in this defense. And really the entire unit, the defensive line, the linebackers, secondary, all flying around. And I think that Tim Lewis has done a good job of kind of keeping things simple, not asking them to do too much with such a short time span, and it allows them to play fast. And I think it really showed. So they were able to create havoc, and Xavier Dixon and a lot of those guys were able to really fly around and create some plays. And I thought it really turned out to be a good unit there on Sunday.
And before we talk about Alabama football, I wanted to ask about the atmosphere at the. We know that Legion Field, of course, has seen better days from a structural standpoint, but it's still a historic place. I know it was not used by the University of Alabama when you played, but I know I heard you and Tom Abraham kind of referencing when you're around the field and when you're down there, though, you still kind of feel the history. How was the atmosphere in the crowd? It seemed to be that just listening on the radio and hearing you guys' reactions that it was a good first chapter for the Steel City.
Yeah, I really thought it was. There was a lot of questions coming into it, and anybody who watched Saturday's games, obviously there was some excitement building. But looking at the forecast, it's a February game, so we were wondering about 40s temperatures, rain in the forecast. People showing up to Legion Field. I thought it was great. I actually think, looking at the official numbers from the Iron, they released about 17,000. I think they actually undersold themselves. I was shocked, and Tom and I were talking in the booth. We thought it was between 20 and 25, just knowing that, at capacity that Legion can seat 77 and with the end zones closed off. So, I thought it was a great first run. I'll be anxious to see what Saturday brings this weekend when they return back against the Salt Lake Stallions, and hopefully a little bit better weather. But I'll be anxious to see. I think the word is out on the league, and I think the word is out on Birmingham and just how good this Iron football team is going to be. So I would expect some big crowds. I thought it was a very warm welcome on social media and in person and on the news. And a lot of the phone calls I've been getting have all been positive about not only the Birmingham Iron, but the league as a whole. So bravo and hats off to the Birmingham Iron fans that really have bought into this thing. And you saw everybody show up in their black and silver and, cheer this team on to victory. And also, Drew, it bears mentioning these were smart fans, booing
Yes.
Memphis when they come on the field and cheering on the third downs and understanding the ins and the outs. So it wasn't just people showing up and having a day at the zoo or something. These people were showing up and ready to watch some football.
And I thought it was cool. I saw the picture on social media. A lot of former Bama guys on the sideline supporting a lot of their teammates on the squad.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always good to see. And when you have 10 former Bama guys and a lot of popular, former Bama guys, you talk about Blake Sims and some of the other players. I mean, you're talking about former captains at Alabama. So to see the support, not only that, I saw a number of Bama shirts. I saw a number of Auburn shirts. I saw a number of people walking around the stadium in their collegiate gear because you know as well as I do, in the state of Alabama, college football is king. But I think people, and that's the smart thing the AAF did, is people are drawing these, these tie-ins, and people are loving the tie-ins to these football teams, and understanding they can see some of the stars from their college teams in action and being able to do it still at a high level. So, like I said, I think all in all, for a debut, it really worked, and the fans were really in tune. There was, fireworks and there was flames, and I think it was a good step forward.
Yeah, it really was, and we're talking to Mike Johnson. He's the color analyst now for the Birmingham Iron, and you can hear he and Tom Abraham on the call each weekend for these next 9 weeks. They have 1 week in the books. He's going to do a great job. He's also a college football analyst. And putting your college football analyst hat on, we heard the message from Nick Saban. You know better than most. You, of course, played for him, helped set the foundation for this program, what it's doing now. When Nick Saban says that they've got to get the Alabama factor back, what does that mean to you, and what does that mean for this Alabama football program going into spring practice?
Well, I think Nick Saban, talking about the Alabama factor, you know as well as I do, Drew, that a lot of the hires last year were based around recruiters, based around guys that could go out and recruit to this roster. And, I think that's a big reason Tosh LaPoy was the defensive coordinator. I think that was a big reason Michael Loxley was the offensive coordinator, is they had these recruiting tie-ins. And Alabama, still obviously, top 5 or 6 class last year, but did not finish number 1 in recruiting. So I don't want to call it a knee-jerk reaction by Nick Saban last year to bring in these recruiters, but I think he understood after the Clemson game that, hey, we still need guys that can coach guys up on the field. We still need the Burton Burns and the Joe Pendrys and guys like that, the Kirby Smarts, the Jeremy Pruitt, who not only can recruit but also know the X's and O's. And I think that's what he's done here. I think when you look at the staff that he is trying to assemble and that he has put together, it's a mixture of both. Now, some of these guys are going to have to show themselves as recruiters. I think they will over time. But I think X's and O's, obviously, and that's what Nick Saban's alluding to, you got to get back to guys that know the game and know how to, not only just get guys to the University of Alabama, but get the best out of those guys once they get there. There's only so much that Nick Saban and Scott Cochran can do to develop these players. You also have to have coaches that know the system in and out and can get the most out of these guys. So that's what Nick Saban's alluding to. And you know as well as I do, Drew, you trust in Nick. You always got to err on the side of caution when it comes to him. And I think he's put together quite a impressive coaching staff so far.
Well, and as we're wrapping it up with you, what are your thoughts? You're still very close to the Falcons. I mean, you spent your pro career there. You're still in the city of Atlanta. What are your thoughts on Steve Sarkisian coming back? And then Kyle Flood, because they seem to kind of be joined together. Flood was the assistant O-line coach a couple years ago, was a special assistant to Dan Quinn this year. What are your thoughts on those two guys? Because I still look to the relationship with Sark and the Tunga Vailoas and Najee Harris, but what are your thoughts on those two gentlemen that they're going to be huge with the hopeful the transition and the hopeful continued productivity of this offense, and then trying to get it back to where it's more productive in the red zone?
Yeah, it's funny to me, Drew. I tried to remind Bama fans that Steve Sarkisian's a good hire. It seems like with the way he left last time and the fact that he was fired out of Atlanta, people are kind of down on what Steve Sarkisian is. But, after he's overcome the alcohol issues, this guy is still a former very quality Power 5 head coach. I mean, this guy obviously was at Washington, was successful, was at USC and was successful to a degree, as much as he could have been with the issues he had. But this is still a quality football coach who knows offenses and knows how to recruit, knows X's and O's. So, people that, and I've heard some people that were down on the hire. I try to tell them, hey, listen, try to look past the exit, try to look past the situation you saw last time, and understand this is a very, very, very highly thought of football coach, and I think that's what they're getting. And even though he was let go by Dan Quinn and the Falcons, they still had a top 10 offense. Now, obviously, getting in the red zone, they struggled at times. Their offensive output was still the same as it was when they were having successful times. Top 10 offense, but they were not able to put points on the board, and some of the red zone scoring really suffered for that reason in Atlanta, as a lot of Atlanta Falcons fans will point out. But when it comes to Kyle Flood, not as much of a book on Kyle Flood, just because, honestly, in his career, he hasn't been in charge of that many offensive lines by himself. I mean, he has been before, but it's hard to really get a book on a guy that's been an assistant offensive line coach, and before that was a head coach. So you try to talk to as many people as you can, and what I've gathered about Kyle Flood is that he's just very highly respected and was highly respected within the Atlanta Falcons organization, so much so that Dan Quinn was going to trust him with the late game management, and was going to trust him to make some of these calls on timeouts and instant replays and things like that. That's how highly thought of he was. And so him moving to Alabama, I think it kind of fits that mold like we talked about. X's and O's coaches that know the game and know how to teach the game. And obviously Nick Saban was very impressed with what he was able to put forward. So, I mean, the duo coming over from Atlanta, at face value, I know a lot of people had concerns about Steve Sarkisian. I, for one, am pretty jacked up about it. I think that he's a guy that knows offense. And it's not like he's not being dealt a ton of tools here. I mean, it's about as good of a situation as you could possibly step into. I mean, he would have to try to fail with this offense under Tua Tagovailoa. So as long as this offensive line can hold up under Kyle Flood, I think that we're in for some pretty good fireworks offensively this year.
Well, certainly we hope to hear the continue the fireworks with the Birmingham Iron, 26-0 winners. They'll be taking the field at 1 o'clock on Saturday against the Salt Lake Stallions, and you can hear that call with Mike Johnson and Tom Abraham. We're looking forward to that, and your continued success as that color analyst as you continue to grow your career, and of course as a college football analyst as well. We always enjoy catching up with you in the city of Tuscaloosa. Look forward to talking with you again soon. Thanks for the time, Mike.
Always a pleasure, Drew. You have a good day, buddy.